Ever been judged by how you look? It's a sting we all know. In today's story, we meet a dad and daughter who step into a world that seems determined to look down on them. But what happens next? Well, you'll find out in the full story, so stay tuned. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're listening from today. And if this story of standing tall against unfair judgment touches you, please give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We're here to share stories that remind us of the real human heart. So let's get started. Michael was a man who worked with his hands. Strong, calloused hands that had built things his whole life. Houses, fences, decks. You name it, he could build it. He wasn't fancy, not in clothes, not in words. He was a simple guy, a good guy. His world was made of wood and nails and honest sweat. But his world also held something precious. His daughter, Lily. Lily was sunshine in human form. She had this bright, curious smile that could light up a whole room, and eyes that saw the best in everyone. Today was a special day. It was Lily's 10th birthday. 10 years old. Michael couldn't believe how fast she was growing. It felt like just yesterday he was holding her as a baby. Now she was chattering about her favorite books and dreaming of being a scientist. Lily had good grades this year in school. She had also worked really hard helping around the house. Michael knew they didn't have a lot of money, not like some families. But he wanted to make her birthday special, really special. He had been saving up, little by little, for weeks. He'd even picked up extra shifts, his muscles aching at the end of the day, just to make this happen. He had decided to take Lily to the Gilded Spoon. It was the fancy restaurant in town. The kind of place with white tablecloths, waiters, in bow ties, and prices that made his wallet a little nervous. But Lily had seen it in a magazine once, and her eyes had just lit up. "Daddy, can we go there someday? It looks like a fairy tale," she'd said. And Michael had promised her, someday. Someday was today. Now, standing in front of his mirror, Michael smoothed down his best shirt. It was a plain blue button-down, freshly ironed by Lily's careful hands. He wore his good jeans too, the ones without holes, and polished his work boots until they gleamed a little, even if they still looked like work boots. He knew he probably wouldn't fit in at the Gilded Spoon. He wasn't a suit and tie kind of guy, but he was Lily's dad, and that's all that mattered. He wanted her to have this dream, this fairy tale birthday dinner. When Lily came out, Michael's heart melted. She was wearing a pretty dress her grandmother had sent, a soft pink one with little flowers. She'd brushed her hair until it shone, and even put on a little bit of lip gloss she had borrowed from her aunt. She looked like a princess. "Wow, Lilybug," Michael said, his voice thick with pride. "You look absolutely beautiful." Lily giggled and spun around. "Do you think they'll like my dress at the fancy restaurant, Daddy?" "They'll be amazed," Michael said, taking her hand. "Anyone would be." As they drove to the Gilded Spoon, Michael felt a little knot of nerves in his stomach. It wasn't about the money, though that was part of it. It was more... Well, he wasn't used to places like this. His usual dinners were at the local diner, burgers and fries, places where everyone knew your name and nobody cared what you wore. When they pulled up outside the restaurant, Lily gasped. It was even grander than she'd imagined. Big windows, gleaming brass, and a doorman in a uniform that looked like it belonged in a movie. Michael parked his trusty old pickup truck a little further down the street, not wanting to park it right in front of the elegant entrance. Walking towards the restaurant, Michael held Lily's hand tight. The air outside felt different, almost posh. Inside, it was another world entirely. Soft lighting, the gentle murmur of voices, the scent of expensive perfume and something delicious cooking. A host in a sleek black suit greeted them with a practiced smile. "Reservation for Carter," Michael said, feeling a little awkward in his work clothes under the fancy chandeliers. The host tapped on his screen. "Carter, yes, for two. Right this way." He led them through the dining room. Michael tried not to stare. Everyone seemed so well dressed, so different. Men in sharp suits, women in elegant dresses, their voices low and confident. Michael felt a little out of place, like a piece of rough wood in a room full of polished marble. They were seated at a table near the back, not quite hidden, but definitely not in the prime spots by the window. The waiter, a tall, thin man with a supercilious air, approached. His name tag read, Jean-Paul. "Good evening," Jean-Paul said, his voice lacking any real warmth. He placed menus in front of them without making eye contact. "May I offer you something to drink?" "Just water for us, please," Michael said. He glanced at the menu. Wow, the prices were even higher than he expected. He swallowed hard, hoping he had brought enough. Jean-Paul raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Certainly. Still or sparkling?" he asked, as if water itself was some complicated decision. "Still is fine," Michael said, feeling a little foolish for not knowing the right kind of water. Jean-Paul poured their water again, without a smile. He stood there expectantly. "We need a few minutes to look at the menu, thank you," Michael said, trying to be polite, but also feeling a little bristly under the waiter's cold gaze. Jean-Paul gave a curt nod and retreated. "Daddy," Lily whispered, looking around. "Everyone here is so fancy." "They are, honey," Michael said gently. "But that doesn't mean we don't belong here. We're here to celebrate you, remember? And this is a treat." He forced a smile, trying to hide his own growing discomfort. They looked at the menus. Lily pointed at dishes with wide eyes, asking what everything was. Michael patiently explained, though he himself wasn't really sure about half of it. He steered her towards things he recognized, trying to find something special but still somewhat affordable. When Jean-Paul finally returned, it felt like he was doing them a favor. "Have you decided?" he asked, his tone clipped. Michael ordered for Lily first, a simple pasta dish he knew she'd like. Then he ordered himself a steak, the least expensive one on the menu, telling himself it was still a celebration. "Anything else?" Jean-Paul asked, tapping his pen impatiently on his notepad. "No, thank you," Michael said. Jean-Paul snatched the menus and walked away. The food took a while to arrive. Michael watched other tables getting served, laughing and chatting, their waiters attentive and smiling. Jean-Paul seemed to have forgotten they existed. Michael started to feel a sinking feeling. Was this a mistake? Had he brought Lily to a place where they just didn't fit in? When their food finally came, it wasn't Jean-Paul who brought it, but a younger server, who placed the plates down quickly and hurried away. The food looked beautiful, artfully arranged on the plates, but somehow, the magic was starting to fade. As Lily ate her pasta, she was quiet. Michael tried to make conversation, asking her about her day, about school, anything to lighten the mood. But even Lily's bright smile seemed a little dimmed. Then Jean-Paul reappeared, hovering over their table like a disapproving hawk. "Is everything to your satisfaction?" he asked, his voice dripping with insincerity. Before Michael could answer, Jean-Paul glanced at Michael's work boots under the table, and a tiny, almost imperceptible sneer touched his lips. He didn't think Michael noticed, but he did. It was like a tiny prick of a needle, but it stung. "Yes, thank you," Michael said, his voice a little tighter now. "It's nice." Jean-Paul just nodded dismissively and walked away again. Michael felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. It wasn't about the fancy restaurant or the prices or even the slow service. It was about the way they were being treated. Like they were less than, like they didn't belong. He looked at Lily. Her smile was gone now. She was picking at her pasta, her eyes downcast. "Lily bug," Michael said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Is everything okay? Is the pasta good?" Lily shrugged, not looking up. "It's okay, Daddy." Michael knew okay wasn't good enough. Not for her birthday. Not when he had wanted this to be perfect. He was about to say something to Lily, maybe suggest they just leave, when something unexpected happened. A voice, warm and resonant, spoke from behind him. "Michael? Michael Carter. Is that you?" Michael turned, surprised. Standing there, his face beaming with a genuine smile, was a man in a pristine white chef's jacket. It was Chef Antoine, the owner and head chef of the Gilded Spoon. Michael had seen his picture on the restaurant's website. Michael blinked, a little stunned. "Chef Antoine?" "Yes, sir, it's me, Michael Carter." He stood up, a little awkwardly, still holding Lily's hand. Chef Antoine stepped forward, ignoring Jean-Paul, who was suddenly rooted to the spot, his usual haughty expression replaced with something like confusion, and maybe fear? "Michael, my friend, what a surprise to see you here. It's been too long," Chef Antoine said, his French accent rolling warmly over his words. He reached out and clasped Michael's hand in both of his, shaking it with real enthusiasm. "It's, good to see you too, Chef," Michael stammered, completely thrown off by this incredibly warm greeting from such an important man. He felt a blush creep up his neck, as he realized everyone nearby was now looking at them. "And who is this charming young lady?" Chef Antoine asked, turning his attention to Lily. His smile softened even further. "This is my daughter Lily," Michael said, beaming now despite himself. "It's her 10th birthday today. We came here for a special dinner." "Happy birthday, Lily," Chef Antoine said, his eyes twinkling. "It's an honor to have you celebrate your special day in my restaurant." He leaned down slightly, speaking directly to Lily. "You know, your father is a very talented man, Lily. A very talented man." Lily looked up at Chef Antoine, her eyes wide and curious, her earlier shyness starting to melt away under his genuine warmth. "Really?" she whispered, glancing at her dad with a new spark of interest. "Really?" Chef Antoine chuckled. "Michael, do you remember that little house I bought a few years back, up on Maple Hill? The one I dreamed of turning into my family home?" Michael nodded, a slow dawning realization spreading across his face. "You mean your place? With the big windows overlooking the valley?" "The very one," Chef Antoine said with a delighted smile. "Michael, you built that house. You poured your heart and soul into every beam, every nail. It is more than just a house, it's a masterpiece. Every time I walk through those doors, I think of your skill, your dedication." Chef Antoine's voice was loud enough now that it carried across the nearby tables. Several diners were openly listening, their conversations hushed. Jean-Paul was pale and frozen. "Chef, I just did my job," Michael mumbled, feeling deeply embarrassed, but also proud. He hadn't realized how much his work had meant to Chef Antoine. He was just a builder after all. He built things. That was it. "Just your job?" Chef Antoine repeated, his eyes twinkling. "No, Michael, you created a home. You built more than walls. You built a dream. And I have never forgotten it." He turned to Lily again, making sure she was listening. "Lily, your father has hands of gold, do you know that? He can build anything." Lily's eyes were shining now. She looked at her dad with open admiration. Michael saw her shoulders straighten, her chin lift. The little princess was back. Chef Antoine turned back to Michael. "You are celebrating Lily's birthday. This will not do. You are my guest tonight. Please, come with me, I insist." He gestured towards a prime table by the window, just becoming available as the previous diners were leaving. "The best table in the house, for my favorite builder and his beautiful daughter." Michael was completely taken aback. "Chef, really, we couldn't possibly—" "Nonsense," Chef Antoine said firmly but with a smile. "It is my pleasure, and my way of saying thank you properly for the home you built for me. And," he added, glancing pointedly at Jean-Paul, who looked like he might actually faint, "we will make sure you receive the very best service." Chef Antoine led them to the window table himself. He pulled out Lily's chair with a flourish, and then Michael's. He even took their half-eaten plates himself and nodded to another waiter to clear the rest of the table immediately. The change was instant. Suddenly, they were in the spotlight, not cast aside. The new waiter who approached was all smiles and attention, offering them fresh drinks and asking if they needed anything at all. Chef Antoine paused at their table again, personally recommending dishes and promising to send out a special dessert for Lily's birthday. Jean-Paul, who had retreated to a corner, avoided their eyes. He served other tables with forced politeness, but the arrogance was gone, replaced by something else. Shame, maybe? Regret? Michael didn't care. He was too focused on Lily. Lily's smile was back, brighter than ever. She was enjoying the view, the attention, the delicious food that arrived promptly, and most importantly, the obvious pride shining in her father's eyes. They laughed, they talked, they savored the meal. Michael told Lily about building Chef Antoine's house, about how much hard work it had been, but also how proud he had felt when it was finished. Lily listened, rapt, seeing her dad in a new light. Later, as promised, Chef Antoine himself brought out a spectacular birthday cake, complete with candles and singing waiters. Lily's face glowed with happiness. This was the fairy tale birthday dinner she had dreamed of. As they were leaving, Chef Antoine walked them to the door, shaking Michael's hand again warmly and giving Lily a gentle pat on the head. "It was truly my honor," he said sincerely. "Please, come back any time. And Michael, next time you build something amazing, you must let me know. Dinner is always on me." Outside the Gilded Spoon, the night air felt different again. This time it felt sweet. Lily skipped along beside Michael, humming happily. "That was the best birthday ever, Daddy," she exclaimed. "Chef Antoine was so nice, and everyone was looking at us." Michael chuckled, putting his arm around her. "They were, weren't they, Lilybug? And he said you have hands of gold." Lily giggled. "Hands of gold, Daddy." Michael smiled down at her, his heart full. He didn't have gold, but he had something more valuable: his skill, his hard work, his integrity. And he had Lily, who saw him, truly saw him, for who he was, no matter what fancy restaurants or snooty waiters might think. As they walked towards his old pickup truck, parked a little ways down the street, Michael felt 10 feet tall. He was just a simple construction worker. But tonight, at the Gilded Spoon, he had been treated like royalty. Not because of money or fancy clothes, but because of something real, something earned. His pride. And that, he realized, was a price that no waiter could ever put a value on. Wow, what a turn of events, right? From feeling like they didn't belong to being honored for who they truly were. It just goes to show you can never judge a book by its cover, and honest hard work will always shine through in the end. What did you think of Michael and Lily's story? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart and reminded you of the importance of kindness and seeing beyond appearances, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.